the Scottsdale Development Review Board public meeting. The purpose of the Development Review Board is to maintain the quality of development in Scottsdale by reviewing all of the design aspects of a proposed development and the relationship of its design components to the surrounding environment and community. The board also reviews all preliminary plats for subdivisions to assure conformance to policies and ordinance requirements. The agenda consists of the roll call, public comment on non-agendized items, administrative report, minutes, approval of the prior meeting, and action items. A roll call vote will be taken after each item's motion. The liaison will call each board member's name to indicate their desired vote for that item. After the vote has been counted, the liaison may read out the final vote. Citizens wishing to speak during the public comment time or to speak specifically on an agenda item may fill out a blue request to speak card to the staff table before the agenda items is to be discussed. Citizens interested in submitting written comment on any item may submit a yellow written comments card in person to the staff table prior to the beginning of the public testimony. When called, please come up to the podium, state your name and address, and then begin speaking. Groups wishing to speak should elect a spokesperson to represent the views of the group. To facilitate the meeting, your comments will be limited to 3 minutes for an individual speaker, with an additional minute for each additional individual present at the meeting who has contributed their time to a representative speaker, up to a total of 10 minutes. I remind our audience that the board's review relates to design matters and does not include consideration of existing zoning district designations, zoning entitlements, or the allowed uses within the zoning districts. The board's motion may be to approve with modified stipulations, or to deny the request, or to continue a case. Thank you for your time and interest, and now we'll begin our meeting with a roll call.
Councilwoman Whitehead.
Here.
Vice Chair Craig.
Here.
Board Member Joyner.
Here.
Board Member Brand.
Here.
Board Member Faki.
Here.
Board Member Gushgary.
Here.
Commissioner Serena.
Here.
All present. Thank you.
Okay, onward to non-agendized item public comments. I see none. And so I'm going to move on to the administrative report from Brad Carr.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, Councilwoman Whitehead, members of the board. Just real quickly, a couple items in front of you this afternoon. There should be in front of you sort of a revised set of stipulations, as well as a revised landscape plan. That is for the preliminary plat that's on your agenda today at Stagecoach. That item has some last-minute changes that are reflected in those two documents. So any motion for that item today that includes an approval should include those two items to be added to that motion. There's also been some additional correspondence on the item on the agenda for the park, the Ashler Hills Park. So we wanted to make note of that as well, some additional correspondence. And so we will be having our hearing on December 1st. So hopefully we all see you shortly thereafter the holidays. Thank you. That concludes my administrative report.
Okay, thank you. Next item on our agenda is to approve the November 3rd, 2022 Development Review Board regular meeting minutes. Do I have comments, questions, or a motion?
I'll move to approve the minutes of November 3rd, 2022.
I'll second it.
Okay, let's have a roll call vote.
Councilwoman Whitehead.
Yes.
Vice Chair Craig.
Yes.
Board Member Joyner.
Yes.
Board Member Brand.
Yes.
Board Member Faki.
Yes.
Board Member Gushgary.
Yes.
Commissioner Serena.
Yes.
Minutes approved. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to go on to the consent agenda item, and I have requested that we move item number 5, 7PP 2022, to the from the consent agenda to the regular agenda. So on consent, we have two items, item 3, 23DR 2022, and item 4, 11DR 2022. Are there any questions or comments? We have no public comments on those items.
Excuse me, Chair, we do have some public comments on item number 4.
Oh,
So if you want to take those first before you get a motion.
you're right. I apologize to a number of speakers. I was thinking we had 5 and 6. Okay, thank you, Brad. Let's start with Alan Henderson. Oh, actually, he's donating his time to Jude. Jude, you want to come up? Jude, no? Oh, should we, do we want to pull that item since we have so many speakers?
If that's what you want to
Yeah,
do,
would
we
you like to
can do that.
pull why don't we pull that and okay, I think that's a good idea. All right, so let's go ahead and our consent agenda, our ever-shortening consent agenda is going to now be item 3, 23DR 2022. Are there any questions or comments on that item?
Madam Chairman, I move to approve consent item 3, 23DR 2022.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on our one consent agenda item. Can we have a roll call?
Councilwoman Whitehead,
Yes.
Vice Chair Craig,
Yes.
Board Member Joyner,
Yes.
Board Member Brand,
Yes.
Board Member Faki,
Yes.
Board Member Gushgari,
Yes.
Commissioner Serena.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to start with item number, that previously item, consent agenda item, but item number 4, 11DR 2022. Do we have any staff available to make a presentation?
We do. I was just going to ask, Madam Chair, if you'd like a presentation on that, or if you just want to hear from the public comment first.
Okay, let's start with the public comment. Thank you, Brad. So let's go to Jude Naw, who has time donated from Ellen Henderson as well.
Good afternoon, Councilwoman Whitehead and Board. My name is Jude Now from Sundial Resorts. We own the Best Western Sundial at 7320 East Camelback Road. I'm also a resident in downtown Scottsdale. You all probably know better than me. Design affects what we see, feel, and hear. And design matters. That's why this board exists. This is a comment from a guest that stayed with me not so long ago. Excuse me. Kelly H. says, the hotel was beautiful. It was walking distance to Fashion Square. The pool was gorgeous. The fitness room was great. The non-stop outdoor music, yelling, and police all hours of the night was intolerable. Noise from 11 o'clock till 4:30 a.m. 11 in the morning till 4:30 a.m. Not to mention the loud engine cars racing by all night. Then Kelly H. concluded this comment with, never again. It's disgusting. So, anyways, design affects what we see, feel, and hear. In my opinion, the design of the proposed new bar with 2 open-air patios will only contribute to the intolerable noise pollution emanating from the bar district. The design of the building is aesthetically satisfactory. That's what I see. Feelings and emotions, so we'll pass by that detail. But what we hear day and night is noise pollution. Noise pollution is unacceptable in good cities like San Diego, La Jolla, Santa Fe, Jackson Hole, Banff, and noise pollution should be unacceptable in Scottsdale. It's not ambient noise. My concern is the 2 open-air patios on the proposed restaurant and bar have nothing illustrated to mitigate noise pollution. We would like to wish the developer and the owners much success. However, as designed, we're not able to do so. I respectfully request you, our Scottsdale DRB, prior to any approvals, forward recommendations for stipulations to include a well-designed enclosure on all patios and openings of the proposed bar restaurant in order to contain the noise generated within the club, preventing noise pollution. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sonny Kirtley.
Good afternoon, DRB. Chairman Whitehead, Commissioner Serena, and board members. My name is Sonny Kirtley. I'm on the COGS Board of Directors, and our address is on file. DRB. The purpose of DRB. May I have Elmo? Includes the relationship of the development to the surrounding environment and the community. The community. We represent, as COGS, a lot of community members that are in this immediate area. Not only the Best Western Hotel owners that you've heard, but also Scottsdale Terrace, which is to the north, and then we also have in the audience some private home owners that I've made arrows. This is an echo of the Fiesta Bar and Restaurant that was approved across the street, directly across the street on Camelback. At that time, we requested some improvements in the design. We're not talking noise ordinance. The noise ordinance does not exist in downtown Scottsdale, only outside of downtown in the Bar District. We're talking design here. The arrows represent the path of sound directly from these open first floor and second floor lounges. I don't know what their plan is for music, but you're looking at a design of a building that will be there for some time, meaning multiple owners over a period of time. And that means the use may change, the disc jockeys may be involved, the music may be cranked up. It may be totally different clientele. So we're asking you, as part of your purpose, how does it affect the community, to take a close look at this, and as you did with Fiesta, later named, what was it, Casa Rosa, that take a look at the design and see if there's any way for plexiglass, wood materials, or something in the design to help to protect that northern side. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Kirtley. Based on these comments, yeah, this is this is an issue that comes up again and again, so I would like a staff report on what we've done internally to protect the community from noise, and also how does this compare to stipulations on Fiesta and other similarly located restaurant bars?
Councilmember Whitehead and board members, we had a discussion as staff with the applicant about noise mitigation, because it always, as you say, does come up. I believe in their presentation that they include a sound mitigation exhibit, so that's something you may want to take a look at. And, you know, we always review a design, especially in this area, to make sure that it's trying to take that into consideration. Again, it's kind of a tough thing to deal with, because it's an operational issue as opposed to a design issue. It can be a design issue, obviously, but noise is an operation and a use issue for the most part. But we, in terms of STIPs, if the applicant wants to have something stipulated, or is agreeable to having something stipulated, we can stipulate it. But it's, if the design meets the design guidelines, the Old Town Design Guidelines, sensitive principles in terms of materials and finishes, then there may not be a noise stipulation as part of the DR case. Probably wouldn't be, because it is an operational issue.
Right, I guess, and I'll turn it over to my board members here, but I guess what I'm curious about is this has been evolving, and we've been able to negotiate a number of different barriers and conditions. I just wonder how this case compares to recently approved cases.
Councilwoman Whitehead and board members, again, I'd probably like to defer to the applicant to go over what measures they've taken. They do have a sound mitigation exhibit that they might want to explain to you. They have put up some solid barriers facing to the north, but about 42 inches high on the balcony, and then down below there is also solid materials that will, you know, direct the noise more in towards that entertainment district. But in terms of the actual, you know, details of that, I would probably defer to the applicant to let them explain that.
Okay, let me turn it over to the board members. Does anybody have any questions or comments you want to make on this item? Okay, let's have the applicant come up.
Good afternoon, councilwomen and board members. My name is Artie Vigil. I reside at 2026 North 10th Street, Phoenix, Arizona, architect with AV3 Design Studio. I do not have in this exhibit, and how do I forward the? Yep, okay. So the concept for this bar restaurant is really more of a bar lounge. It's not real, it's intended to, I'll show you some examples of the proposed design. The patio is enclosed on the north, and I'll show you some of our renderings. This is facing the street. And to address some of the noise, what we have done is we've increased the walls on the north side to block the noise from the patio. What's not shown in this is a proposed 90-foot tall hotel on the property adjacent to this property. A lot of the speakers that are going to be in the patio will be facing downwards and into the bar area and not facing outwards.
Okay, thanks for expanding on that. And are there any questions or comments? And so and I should know this, but I can't, I'm trying to picture where I am. So there is a building to the north, is what you're saying?
There will be a building to the north. To the north currently is the Mint.
Okay, got it.
And so this is the north facade of the building facing the neighborhood.
Okay.
And you'll see we have solid walls with a few windows, but the majority of the patio is screened. The wall that you see down here, you'll notice that this is about 4 feet tall, so it's 48 inches at the entry. And we've got coverings on top of the patio where the bar is located, so a lot of the sound that goes upwards will be blocked down. So there is exposed view to the west, to the heart of the entertainment district, but not to the north.
Councilwoman Whitehead, if I may, this is Greg Bloomberg again.
Okay.
And board members. Just to clarify what Artie was referring to, the site to the north is part of the Scottsdale Collection Plan Block Development and was approved for, I believe, up to 90 feet in height. No idea when that'll actually be built, but that's what that site is for.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on this agenda item? Okay, I see.
Sorry, not for the applicant. I know we had the similar conversation with the other restaurant that was proposed, and we were able to work a little bit of a solution that seemed agreeable for the neighbors across the street. If it's possible, maybe the neighbors across the street specifically, if they were able to come back to the mic. I'm just trying to get an idea, what ideas or recommendations. I think a lot of the conversation that we led last time was based on what you were looking for, and I think we kind of came to what we thought was maybe reasonable. Are there specifics based on the design that you've experienced that possibly the applicant would be agreeable to block some of that noise? Yeah, I think you have to go ahead.
Commissioner, so to be correct, this wall you're looking at, there's a vacant lot from there up to Camelback Road. There's not a building there. It's not 90 feet. There's not a building. And the Mint is at least 40, 50 yards to the east of the street that this building, Saddlebag, is on.
Right.
As I see it here, I see a rockin' club and a awesome patio and a 4-foot wall. And I'm not a designer. You are more versed in design than I am. So for me to propose a solution would be backwards. What I can see, though, is there's nothing to block noise pollution from emitting from this club, be it northwest or up. And believe me, I've lived in this neighborhood for 30 years. That's going to be a club. And it's beautiful. And the managers will get in there and they're going to bring in guest DJs and live bands, and we're going to have more comments like I brought you earlier. So the solution, I believe, is to enclose it, whether it's enclosed with a block wall, a glass wall, a special high-tech sound force field, I don't know. But there's a solution that a good designer should present to the DRB that I can support and wish them success. We should not be assaulted by the noise pollution that comes out of this. And if I brought a record or a recording of the lyrics that we hear and played it on full blast as loud as we can hear it, not only would you be assaulted by your ears, but all the free speech in the world doesn't entitle that to be forced onto other people's ears either. So an enclosure of some sort and good design should be able to figure that out, which I'm not a designer.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Board Member Brand?
just go.
Board Member, okay.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I just have a question actually about outdoor event. Doesn't outdoor event need a use permit, I guess, or is it allowed to have a outdoor event, like under the zoning?
Councilwoman Whitehead, Board Member Faki, special events, yes, that occur occasionally would require some kind of a special approval. However, if they are having regular ambient noise there, that just needs to follow any kind of code requirement that's in place.
So is DJ considered special or not special? Like when
A
I have
DJ would be live entertainment, and that would require additional use permit approval in order to have a DJ there.
Okay, so the entertainment we're talking about here, it's a bar, you may have some loud music, but if you end up doing any live band or DJ, you do have to come back for use permit, is this correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and the same discussion, and I know staff been working a lot on Old Town, noise study and figure out what could be done and whatnot. Under the current ordinance, they still have to comply with our noise requirement as well. I think it was like 68 close to the residential or something at the residential boundary. I say by the ordinance, I don't know if they comply, but I think our ordinance say that no entertainment should be bleeding off to like 68 decibel at our residential boundary.
Councilman Whitehead, Board Member Faki, the requirement is for the noise to cast to travel outside of the downtown boundary and reach a certain decibel point. So if there's a point inside there that's exceeding that amount, then they would have to come into compliance. And so this one project being close to the boundary may exceed that at some point, but
and it will be easily to point out. The challenge is in the middle of the entertainment district, it's really tough to figure out which one is creating the noise. I think on this one here at the edge, a little bit easier to figure out who's creating the most noise, I guess. But going back, my point is at least DJ, live entertainment, has to go back for use permit, which is good news. So at least this is an item. You mentioned, I think the neighbor mentioned earlier, that they will not be able to do that unless they go back for use permit. The second piece here on the north side, at least in the interim condition till the north side get to be developed, it could be an opportunity to create some really glass, partition or whatnot, just to stop the bleed off along the north side. I don't know if this will address some of the concern and could keep the aesthetic, but just some thoughts. So, thank you.
Board Member Brand?
Yep. I just want to make a couple statements because I've looked at this project quite a bit, and just for your information, I do a substantial amount of hospitality work as well professionally. It's interesting, we talk about the noise emanation and even the complaint that was read from the hotel guest that's existing within the entertainment district right now. And if you look at places that are designed within that area, specifically the two bars that are directly south of this and the one, I think it's Whiskey Row, that's across the street. Those bars have no they're fully enclosed. Exactly what you're talking about right now is what those bars have done. So they're only open at the front side. Those are inline bars, those are inline entities, a full roof covering, there's no open air, and you are getting these complaints about the noise coming from this area. And I've done enough acoustic studies on restaurants and open areas just based on hard surfaces. I mean, you're going to get noise emanating from this establishment in some way, shape, or form if you have a 3-foot wall or a 4-foot wall on the north side. And I would put it out there that I think if you're looking at a dining establishment, that fully enclosing and creating concrete walls and concrete roofs around open air spaces in Arizona is the exact wrong solution for how people want to enjoy life in Arizona. I think we have a great season here that people like to be out in the sun and out in the open and out in the open air when they're in dining establishments. It's something that people love to do, and it's frankly the reason why people come here in this season that we're in right now. So to me, the design of this project meets the requirements that we've set forth on the board. It just seems like there's a greater discussion about compliance and a noise ordinance that needs to be in place. And frankly, this project can't control if there's police and people running around the streets like that. I don't know that this board can take into consideration the use and the type of the bar. I think it's the aesthetic design and its placement. And contradictory, we've talked about what, a design fitting in complementary to its surrounding area. The surrounding area of this is assembly uses and is hospitality uses. So in some ways, this does fit in appropriately. But I think the noise issue is a problem, and I want to see it resolved. But I personally don't have any faith that just raising a wall up 6 to 8 inches is going to make a dramatic difference to mitigate sound from something that is 100 plus feet away from the edge of Camelback Road, that's more than 100 feet from the downtown boundary. To me, it doesn't seem like that. I think the real teeth of this gets into the noise ordinance and compliance and the enforcement of noise abatement and low frequency vibrational noise coming out of these establishments, which I don't think is really a DRB issue. It's more of I'm not sure where that would lean towards, but from a design and materials and quality standpoint, I think that the project presents very well, and I do like the north wall. I think it's not lost that you've done a full solid wall across the northern edge of the open space within the restaurant that I think actually will assist with that, but I just have no faith that this is going to be resolved by raising up a perimeter wall of a patio of 6 to 12 inches, but I'll wait to hear what the rest of the board has to say.
Are there any questions or comments from any other board members? Okay, well, I will say then that for 3 years, the City Council is looking to address or change, update the noise ordinance. This is a problem. But I guess with the end of our comments up here, I'd entertain a motion from the board. Do I not have any board member wishing to make a motion on this
I
item?
wanted to find my cheat sheet.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve case number 411 DR 2022 Saddlebag Restaurant Bar with the staff recommended stipulations, finding that the development application meets the applicable development review board criteria.
I'll second it.
Okay, let's do a roll call vote.
Councilwoman Whitehead,
Yes?
Vice Chair Craig,
Yes.
Board Member Joyner,
Yes.
Board Member Brand,
Yes.
Board Member Faki,
Yes.
Board Member Gushgary,
Yes.
Commissioner Serena.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to move on to item number 57PP 2022 Stagecoach and Windmill. I just want to mention, since I'm the person up here who pulled this off consent that I've been involved with this particular development since, I would say about December 2018, maybe a month after I was elected. And it's really an example of how the system, Scottsdale's development system, works. The project came forward to the city at probably a third or more the density that was finally approved. And the question that I get asked all the time is, if the council approves a zoning case with stipulations, does the staff make sure that those stipulations are adhered to? That's the common question. And so here we are with an example of a great example to show that, in fact, the answer is yes, that when we negotiate on behalf of our citizens to make sure that our development is a win-win for everybody, we actually stick to those stipulations. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and let staff make a presentation.
Thank you, Chair and board members. Casey Steinke, Planner, City of Scottsdale, presenting case 7PP 2022, Stagecoach and Windmill, also known as Signature at Stagecoach Pass, a Shea Homes project. You can see the location here. The northeast corner of the perimeter site is at Stagecoach and Windmill. The majority of these lots will be accessed off of Windmill Drive, with the two larger lots to the southwest accessed off of Hawk Nest. The existing zoning, again, for the majority of these will be R170 ESL, and those two aforementioned lots to the southwest will be R1190 ESL. You can see here the layout of this 15-lot subdivision across 40 gross acres, about 17 acres of which will be natural area open space, resulting in an overall density of 0.4 dwelling units per acre. And as you mentioned, Councilwoman, there's a long history with this, various applicants over the course of years, various densities proposed. And in this current iteration, there has been a lot of communication with staff and the applicant, and a lot of outreach dealing with some concerns, ensuring that, it can be a bit of a narrow site, trying to mitigate some of the impacts on the abutting subdivision and parcels, resulting in a variety of mechanisms to try and mitigate some of these impacts. One of which is along the north and the east ends of the perimeter of the site. There will be a 50-foot scenic corridor easement, along with a couple of other protective easements like trail easements. Additionally, in terms of setbacks, there were concerns from the Tecolote and the Sandflower subdivision about setbacks from them, ultimately resulting in a situation or a stipulation rather from the zoning case, where essentially these new parcels will match the setbacks of any abutting parcel. So if a Tecolote lot has a rear setback of 60 feet, the abutting parcel in this potential project will match that at 60 feet. In more recent iterations, there have been concerns about the cul-de-sac and how it terminates at the south there. It gets pretty close, or had gotten pretty close to the Sandflower subdivision. And there were concerns about traffic and high beams being disruptive to the people to the south. Therefore, the applicant has proposed and is stipulated to a 4-foot site wall and additional landscaping to include ironwood and mesquite and various other trees and shrubs to help protect that. And also, again, I emphasize there is an excess amount of NAOS in this subdivision, which just in a general sense kind of condenses where development can go. All of these things, among a variety of others, have satisfied the stipulations from the previous zoning case. Therefore, the applicant does request today that the board approve this preliminary plat for a 15-lot residential subdivision with amended development standards over this 40 acres, which will be zoned R170 ESL and R1190 ESL, again located at the southwest corner of Windmill and Stagecoach Roads. That concludes staff presentation. I'm happy to answer any other questions. We also have Zach Hill with Kimley Horn.
Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is see if there's any questions for staff. And I see none. I think what I'm going to do is switch over to our public speakers and then see if we need to bring the applicant up here. So let's start with Bonnie Kalanja. I'm probably saying your name wrong.
Thank you, Councilman Whitehead and DRB members. I am a resident. My name is Bonnie Calandra. I live in Sandflower. My address is 8043 East Arroyo Hondo Road. I have several concerns regarding this, but right now I have a letter that was written to me by another resident who could not be here, and she asked me to read it. It's my understanding that the developer has already addressed some of these issues, so I thank you in advance for that, but I'm just going to read this as she asked. This is from Christine Frank. She lives at 8350 East Arroyo Hondo Road in Sandflower, immediately south of the project at Stagecoach and Windmill Roads. She's been working with neighbors to follow this project and provide input to the City Council staff and the owner over 3 years. The neighbors on the south end of the project are promised landscaping berm to shield their homes and yards from car headlights on the road and cul-de-sac immediately adjacent to their properties. We do not see, she didn't see it in the current drawings, so I'm understanding that's being taken care of. This is agreed to by the original owner through its representation, Susan Bittersmith, as part of the outreach leading up to the approval of the rezoning in December of 2020. Ms. Bittersmith represented to her that this requirement would go with the land and therefore be imposed by any new owner. We're also concerned about the NAOS along Windmill Road be maintained in its current condition as is and not be torn up and later revegetated. The width of the NAOS was to be 50 feet minimum per the agreement of the rezoning from the edge of Windmill Road or the building envelopes of the lots. We are concerned the property not be mass graded at the outset and only graded gradually as need be to build out development. We want to mitigate the stirring up of dormant valley fever fungus, disturbing vegetation, and limit access stormwater runoff during the construction. Note that this property contains one of the largest areas of saguaro in North Scottsdale. At the City Council meeting, when the rezoning was approved, the applicant was asked by Council Member Kathy Littlefield to save as many as humanly possible. The Sandflower HOA would like to note the plan for limiting construction, traffic, debris, and noise on the streets through their community, and we are concerned about the potential increased storm runoff onto our properties and how this will be mitigated. We have requested a copy of the drainage plan, which we were discussing this morning. I have similar concerns regarding all of that. A lot of it I am concerned about the construction through the two landlocked lots, which appears to have to be coming through our property, through the HOA to access those two lots. So I want to know how that's being addressed. And one of the biggest things I'm concerned about is the water drainage runoff and the sewer systems that are being put in and how that's going to affect us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Karen Harbin.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karen Harbin. I live at 8466 East Tecolote Circle in Scottsdale, and we live on the east side of the Windmill Road, so we're on 2 acres across from the east of that. And my concerns are the speed bumps. There's supposed to be 4 speed bumps, and they've indicated there's 35,000. Well, we all know in the last 2 years, 35,000 doesn't get us as much as it used to. So our concern is that maybe 1 speed bump, and we get traffic going 40, 50, 60 miles per hour up that road. They just, it's speedway. Even though it's a small country road, it's just very fast traffic. So that's a concern that that's not enough money to cover the 4 speed bumps from Stagecoach to Hawk Nest. My other concern also is the NAOS being disrupted. We were told back when we first began this that the NAOS would be at least 50 feet or not, of left, nothing touched. And looking at the map that we're given by Shea Homes, it shows that it's going to be all taken up and just revegetated. So that's a big concern of mine. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Preston Smith.
Good afternoon. Thank you, board and attendees. I live on the west side of the proposed development and have for 12 years. I've been visiting the general area for over 60 years. My major concern is that the developer will somehow manage to get a road put in across the top of the west 10 acres. That would be the north end of the west 10 acres, and that will become heavily used by the residents on the east side of the development as well as the ones on the 10 acres. It will directly impact Sandflower because it'll be a place to come and go from for the people that don't want to go out the other end. My other concern is that I would not be surprised if it's somewhere along the line they will request a zoning change for that 10 acres to increase the density. That has not been done yet, but I would not be surprised at that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Lynn Sullivan.
Can I put up this?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. My name is Lynn Sullivan. I have been living in Sandflower at 34822 North 81st Street since 2001. From the time I moved in, I was very interested in where the water was going because it was not too far from my property. I was also on the board and on the drainage committee since those very early years. What I'm concerned about today is that the difference between what was approved at the last meetings and this is the 10 acres where there's going to be a road and it appears to be a cul-de-sac where 2 houses will be built, and that would be this section right here. I'm very concerned about that because there is an issue with the wash. Let me switch that. In Sandflower, we have 100 acres, 100 homes. We have 21 basins, and so the water that flows through Sandflower, I know every inch of it, and it's cool. It's a beautiful place to walk. What I'm concerned about is what I've put up on the screen is something called a 50 CFS, cubic feet per second, wash that comes across the lower section of that 10-acre piece. My last understanding was that this 10 acres was not going to be developed at all, so I was quite surprised to see that this is a change, that this has been added. Not only that, but they want to have a road put in there where my little red line is, and 2 houses above in that area, maybe further north than I've drawn them. My concern is, can you see the blue houses, the blue circles? That's Sandflower, and the red is what's to be built. The 2 that are circled are in floodplain, according to the City of Scottsdale maps. And that's unfortunate, because when those people bought their homes, these are beautiful homes, 2 acres or more, they were not in floodplain. But because a fair amount of water comes through this wash, that's what happened to them. I don't want that to happen to anybody else. All of the water from this development comes down to Sandflower, with the exception of the furthest north section. So this little braided wash, unnamed, is going to be asked to carry a bunch more water, no matter what they do. I do understand that they're not supposed to add to our water burden, but they probably will. So now they're going to put a little road there. There's going to have to be a significant bridge to get over that bottom section. And then we have lots of construction traffic coming right into the center of Sandflower. So before my time is up, I wonder why they could not have made the road continuous and out onto the Windmill. They have 2 major streets. Why they have to come in into the heart of Sandflower, 25 miles an hour with all their trucks and all their development, and also I'm worried about the mitigation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, let's have the applicant come up and address these issues.
All right, my name is Keith Nichter. with Kimley Horn. I'm a land planner and working with Shay and Zach on this case. Councilwoman Whitehead, Commissioner Serena, members of the board, really appreciate Casey's presentation. I don't think there's a need for us to provide a formal presentation. I will just reaffirm that this case, as you know, is a very low density subdivision, and it is consistent with the general plan, the environmentally sensitive land ordinance, and the site zoning. It's also consistent with the previously approved zoning case. I'll also mention, just because we were not directly involved in that zoning case, we have been happy, and it's been great to hear from the neighbors throughout this process to make sure that and we've been happy to make necessary adjustments through this process, but it's been good to hear from them and understand that we can make adjustments to ensure that their specific negotiations are intact in this submittal. So we've worked through the process to make adjustments as necessary to ensure that those stipulations are in place and that we're meeting the intent of that approval. I'll do my best to kind of go through each comment. First off, let's start with the mention of the cul-de-sac. As you did see, we received a comment in the last few days about some concern that the cul-de-sac did creep closer to the project boundary. We wanted to ensure that there was no concern there, and we shifted that up, but do know that it was always our intent, based on the stipulations with this case, that we would be building the landscape berm and the 4-foot wall. That will be consistent with those stipulations, both in the zoning and the pre-plat, but we also updated the plan, as you'll see, to make that clear that that will be built. So definitely hear your concerns there, and we're happy to make that adjustment to make sure that that is clear, and it definitely will be happening per the stipulations. Related to the comment about construction coming through for the 10 acres, and this kind of doubles back to the last comment about access to the 10 acres. I will say that we originally tried to provide access to the 10 acres through the main site. Problem with that was that we were not in conformance with the previous zoning case by doing that. So we went back to the drawing board and provided access where it currently is shown in all the city plans related to their local area infrastructure plans. So we provide access to that 10 acres where it has a legal access, and is planned by the city. But I will say that it was our original intent to try to have those 2 lots access from the site, but there were concerns based, and as you mentioned, there was a lot of coordination that happened in that zoning case. In fact, that portion actually originally was a part of that zoning case, I believe, but was pulled out. And just to be consistent and compatible with the zoning approval, we ended up making that access separate. So hopefully that addresses those comments. Related to the drainage, I will say that we have an approved drainage report. I know that was requested, so we'll make sure that gets to you. The city staff has reviewed our drainage report, both through the zoning, the approved zoning, and through our preliminary plat, and that we will abide by that approved drainage report. There is significant drainage that occurs where that map showed it, and we are accommodating that through infrastructure necessary to handle those flows. And like any project in the city of Scottsdale that gets developed, we'll be consistent with those requirements that, wherever water's coming in the site, it remains the same, and wherever water leaves the site, it remains the same. So we'll make sure that's the case so that there's no additional impacts. Any other impacts to the site from drainage standpoint will be addressed through basins and necessary city of Scottsdale requirements, but related to the flows that pass through our site, those will leave the site as they currently do. So I think there was one other comment related to just NEOS and buffers, and the speed bumps, but related to the scenic corridor on Windmill, the majority of that will be in its natural form. I think there was some mention that there is some revegetation that occurs. That is the case because we have to widen Windmill Road to meet city requirements. So when you widen the road, obviously there's some disturbance associated with that, and that's where the revegetated NEOS comes into place. So everything outside of where that disturbance occurs to meet that city's cross-section will be in undisturbed natural area open space, so that will be in its natural form. So we do meet all those setbacks that were approved in the zoning case. Also, lastly, I think this is the last one, address the speed bumps. We will be willing to make sure that all 4 of those speed bumps get built. So that will be stipulated, and we're happy to ensure that that occurs. So I think I did a good job maybe remembering all those comments, but what's that? Oh, yeah, related to all the saguaros and making sure that the majority of the native plants get preserved on the site. There was a native plant survey that was done as part of this project. So we have basically a record of all the plants on the site and a place for those to go. So anything that does get disturbed will be put back into revegetation through the property. Oh, mass grading. I didn't miss one. Shoot. Thanks, Zach. So mass grading, based on our zoning, we cannot mass grade. I believe it's R118 is the cutoff for mass grading in ESL. So because we're well above that, each lot will have to come in for an individual grading permit. So we'll be able to grade the roads, and then outside of that, everything else will be done on a lot-by-lot basis. I think that was it. Any questions from the board?
That's very good, and I just learned something new. I didn't know that about the grading permits, so that's very interesting. Okay, let's see if there's any, I guess, go ahead, Board
Madam
Member.
Chairman. I just have a question.
Yes.
The 2 lots that are going to be along the west part of because this is a subdivision, I don't see, how are those 2 neighbors going to move around into the other neighbors that are in part of that subdivision? I'm sorry?
Was there another comment? Sorry. Oh, sorry, I thought I heard some.
Yes, I thought they were talking to me too.
Yeah.
But is there a walkway that's going to allow for, if I lived in lot 15 and I wanted to go see my neighbor in lot 11, is there a way to get there?
Board Member Joyner, they essentially will be separate. There is a sewer easement that connects the properties, so technically there is the ability to access or traverse along that easement, but the reality is they will be separate. The site itself was kind of bisected when that 10 acres got pulled out of the zoning, so from a typical subdivision standpoint, there will be kind of a little uniqueness with those kind of 2 areas being separated, but just from a character standpoint, both landscaping and obviously architecture, they'll be tied together in that form, but they are essentially separate.
Kind of weird. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions from Vice Chair?
Mr. Nichter, thank you for your presentation. Well done. Quick question on your landscape plan, I guess is what this is, and you've got some areas of NAOS undisturbed in those lots. You have some areas where there's a re-veg immediately adjacent to some of those lots. I see along Windmill you have the area C where you're coming back with some re-veg planting and enhanced screening along there. There are some lots, 14, 15, and then 5, 6, 7, 8, and 11 that don't have the re-veg hatch or a label C, and I'm just kind of wondering will all those lots have a native or a re-veg around them, or is that?
Board Member Craig, appreciate your question. So anything that's, any type of landscaping that is outside of the re-veg and undisturbed category is what we're considering our enhanced desert landscaping. And the intent that is that all those areas get landscaped with a similar character as the re-veg, so it'll be kind of the same palette, but it won't be dedicated necessarily as NEOS. So the character and the landscaping will be the same as the re-veg, but it's just the dedication that will make that, will basically be the difference between the two.
Okay, so within that lot.
Yeah, and the reality is, because we do come back through with those individual permits per lot, you know, we don't fully understand the full grading of each lot until we come in on an individual basis. So the landscape will essentially be massaged to meet the final grading.
Great. Thanks, Keith.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Go ahead.
I do have
Board
a
Member
question.
Gishgari.
Thank you, Councilwoman Whitehead. Couple of questions for you.
Absolutely.
First of all, I really like your layout, quite honestly. I do like the lot 14 and 15 access. I think it provides a lot of exclusivity and a lot of less traffic. I really like the layout a lot. The question I have are two. One is, have you looked at the possibility of eliminating the cul-de-sac by lot 13 and make lot 13 as a panhandle lot? Now, I do know Scottsdale DSMPM has some preservation against panhandle lots, but perhaps I was curious whether that has been looked at or evaluated, because in this case, a panhandle lot for lot 13 seems appropriate, even though if the city does not prefer that.
Right.
Has that been looked at? That's the first question. The second question is, discussion took place about speed bumps. Where are those speed bumps? Are they on Windmill, or are they on Stagecoach? I would like to clarify that. Thank you.
Board Member Gishgari, thank you for your questions. So related to the cul-de-sac at 13, that was put in place based on conformance with the zoning and the coordination related to fire access and refuse collection. So refuse, in order to go down that street, needs an adequate turnaround, which is why that cul-de-sac remained in place. I do like your idea, but that's the reason behind that. Related to the question about the speed bumps, those are on Windmill, correct? Windmill, yeah.
Okay, are there anybody else have questions, comments?
Councilwoman?
Okay, go ahead.
I do have comment to make as a case instead of to the applicant specifically. Okay. Is this a proper time, or should I wait? Let's do it. Okay, thank you. You know, there was a lot of comments by the residents, and quite frankly, I'm pretty impressed. There are a lot of comments from the resident talks about specific and technicalities. A lot of comments were on drainage, on basins, on floodplain, on things of that sort that gets me excited, because it's something that we typically don't hear about in the technical term from residents. And those are really great questions, by the way, very, very valid questions. This site happened to be going through some planning for the last 20 years into so many different ownership. And I happened to, just coincidentally, to see or have seen those previous layouts as well. Not the whole site, but the upper 20. I'd like to point out a few things to the residents, just to put things in perspective as it relates to the design standard and policy manual for the city of Scottsdale, which is what this board is really focused its review on. This issue about drainage and basin and 50 CFS flow, things of that sort, great comments, but those are really looked at closely by the Stormwater Management Group of the city of Scottsdale. Out of experience, I can tell you this Stormwater Management Group in the city of Scottsdale does not approve case drainage report without looking at the details. I'm very comfortable to go out on a limb and say that. And that should give me and give you as a resident a comfort level that it has not been overlooked. It has been really closely looked out of experience on many, many projects. We talked about the issues were made about the natural area open space in terms of the minimum 50-foot width, in terms of the revegetation. I don't really believe there's any requirement in the Design Standard and Policy Manual to say that the NOS has to be 50-foot minimum width. Not that I'm aware of. NOS is calculated based on area and a minimum width of 30 feet. This case provided a 40-foot right-of-way. To put it in perspective, that's an 80-foot total right-of-way. In my opinion, that's generous, because I don't really see this road to require an 80-foot right-of-way in the next 15 to 20 years. I just don't see it. So in addition to the 40 feet, we have an additional 50 feet of a scenic corridor, plus 10 feet to the building setback or the envelope. So we're talking about a 60-foot aggregate from the right-of-way. But when you look at the distance from the developable envelope to the road, we're talking about in excess of 70 feet. I think that's very generous, and I think that's very appropriate for this area. By the way, I happen to know this area fairly well, and I appreciate the comment from the folks in Sandflower and even the adjoining property to the east and west. Great comments, and I support those. But I'm compelled to make those comments to let you know that when you look at the standard design of City of Scottsdale, this case really complied with all those parameters in a generous way. And for that, I support it as it is. I mentioned the panhandle. I think would be a great solution, but I can appreciate the restriction of the fire code and the refuse collection, which is a problem. I'm hoping that this explanation would give some ease and some explanation as to how this case supports and complies with the Design Standard and Policy Manual for the City of Scottsdale. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Gushgari. Any other comments or questions? Okay, I see none. I just wanted to ask staff, first of all, thank you for answering, because I was jotting down all the notes as well, and I think you touched on all those, the native plants. I was thinking we're not going to get rid of any saguaros. So the question for staff has to do with, are there roads that don't exist that are on the Transportation Action Plan? Are there some, I think the gentleman talked about roads, some roads coming.
Councilman Whitehead, members of the board, I'm not an expert on the Transportation Master Plan, but I do know that there are some roads that may be designated on there that aren't currently built yet. But I don't know specifically with regards to his question, the gentleman's question, whether or not that road is indicated there. I don't know if we have anybody from our transportation staff in the audience currently.
Oh, sorry, I'm not. I think it was Mr. Preston. That's something I'll get back to you on. I'll look into that. It's not going to change this case. Okay, excellent. Well, with that, I would like a motion on this case.
I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda item 7-PP-2022 Stagecoach and Windmill with the staff indicated stipulations.
Second.
Okay, let's have a roll call.
Councilwoman Whitehead,
Yes?
Vice Chair Craig,
Yes.
Board Member Joyner,
Yes.
Board Member Brand,
Yes.
Board Member Faki,
Yes.
Board Member Gushgari,
Yes.
Commissioner Serena.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and congratulations, and thank you to all the residents that came today. Okay, let's move on. We have 51 DR 2021 Ashlers Hills Park is our next item.
Good afternoon, Councilwoman, Commissioner, board members. My name is Katie Posler, and I'm here to present Case 51 DR 2021, which is the Ashley Hills Park. The site is located on the northwest corner of East Ashley Hills Drive and North 74th Way. To the north is a single-family subdivision, to the east is a vacant parcel, to the south is a golf course, and to the west is a commercial shopping center. Here's a closer look at the property, and it is currently home to 2 large washes that bisect the site. The zoning on the site is R5 ESL, which stands for Multiple Family Residential Environmentally Sensitive Lands, and it was rezoned to this zoning district in 2001 as a part of the Whisper Rock rezoning case, and it was designated as a park at that time. The request in front of you today is for approval of a site plan, elevations, and landscape plan for a new park and proposed public art locations on a 15-acre site. Here's the proposed site plan. The park is located on the south half of the site, furthest away from the single family to the north. That is where the NAOS is located on the site, about 4.2 acres. You would enter the site from the southwest corner, and then there are 70 parking spaces to avoid overflow into the street. And then there are 8 pickleball courts, 1 basketball court, 2 lawn areas, and a large shaded canopy that shades the restroom and the playground. There's also a 6-foot sidewalk along the street frontage and a 6-foot decomposed granite path that connects you to the subdivision to the north. Here's a proposed landscape plan. The applicant is using native plants to revegetate the graded areas and also added additional mesquite trees and hot bush shrubs along the sport courts along the northeast corner to buffer from the residential. Here's a proposed shade canopy. It's composed of weathered steel, and this shades the restrooms and playground. There's also a public art location component as a part of this request. So there's 5 spots, and this is on the east side of the shade canopies that abut the sport courts. Here's the detailed image, and this received preliminary design approval from the Scottsdale Public Art Advisory Board. Some key items is that the park was approved by the voters and funded in the 2019 bond election. The Municipal Use Master Site Plan, Case 18 UP 2021, was recently approved by City Council back in October, and the applicant had made many changes throughout that process. They've reduced the lighting height from 16 feet to 12 feet for the pathway lights, and the sport court lights from 24 to 20 feet. They also added additional landscaping and commissioned a noise study, which resulted in the noise being not perceptible to just perceptible. Additionally, the city park is located on the south half, so at least 600 feet away from the residents. The site plan protects the natural washes, and staff has received both support and opposition to the park throughout the process. The action requested today and staff recommendation is that the Development Review Board approve the Ashler Hills Park development proposal, including the public art locations per the attached stipulations. This concludes staff presentation, but the applicant on behalf of the city is also here to present.
Thank you, Katie. Would the applicant like to come up and speak?
Thank you, Katie. Councilmember Whitehead, members of the board, my name is Chris Brown. I'm with Floor Associates, or the landscape architect for the project. And I know a lot of you have seen this project before during the public hearing process, but I'd still like to go through a brief presentation just to reintroduce some of the elements and some of the changes that have probably taken place as the project has evolved over the summer. As Katie mentioned, the project is located on a 15-acre site, but as you can see from this master site plan, that all the development that we're proposing is really located on the southern half of the site. Through the process and the programming with the city, the program currently includes several sport courts, currently 1 basketball court, as well as 8 pickleball courts, all lighted, located on the west side of the property. Approximately 70 parking spaces, a large shade structure that covers the restroom area as well as the playground area to provide good deep shade for those activities, 2 turf areas, and then a majority of the site is encapsulated in the landscape, as you can see. As Katie also mentioned, a good portion of the site, including most of the north half, is going to be maintained as natural area open space. This serves as a very nice buffer to the neighborhoods to the north. The other areas to the south are either programmed areas or intended to be re-landscaped into a revegetated native palette of landscape. This is a close-up of the developed program areas. And as I mentioned, we have located the lighted sport courts along the west side of the property. Very purposely, this is up against the service area of the adjacent power center and about as far away from the residences as we could make them. Adjacent to the sport courts, we have 5 small shade structures, and then the shaded playground area kind of forms the south end of the open park area. We do have 2 404 washes that bisect the park. They were big driving elements in the site planning, and in order to preserve those in place, we're bridging across that from the parking lot, and then we've located the northern one of those washes in the NAOS area. Go through a couple of quick renderings. This is the view of the shade structure as you go across one of those bridges across the southernmost 404 wash. The materiality is all natural steel as well as native materials with the landscape, and then up with the restroom building kind of continues that exact same materiality. A view from the southwest overlooking the shade structure and that entry bridge, as well as a portion of the sport courts in the lower left. View from the northwest. Over the sport courts, you can see the 5 small shade structures in between the large shade structure and the sport courts, and then the open turf play areas. And then a view from the ground plane that it shows the turf areas, but also gives you a glimpse of some of the planters that we're incorporating within the hardscape areas. These are intended to be rainwater harvesting bioswales that are interconnected. Will bring all the rain off the shade structure into these different planter areas. You've already seen this view of the shade structure itself. It's approximately 7,100 square feet, and the highest point above the natural grade is a little under 28 feet tall, all within the requirements of the ESLO. Oops. And then the landscape, also as Katie mentioned, is a very native palette, being respectful of the desert development guidelines as well as the ESLO. Primarily a palette of foothill palo verde and mesquite trees. The third color, the lighter green color, is existing trees or trees we're going to be salvaging from the site in necessarily disturbed areas. The shrub palette is primarily recreating the creosote flats typology that we have on the current site, as well as adding some more of the riparian type plant materials into the lower wash areas and the retention basins. A view of the most southern portion showing the entry coming in, and the kind of the grade stippled area that I think you can see on the east and the west sides here are all just going to be native re-veg. We're intending to maintain as much of that in place, particularly on the east side, which has some very large mature saguaros that we want to keep in situ. Lighting's always a big issue with these neighborhood parks, particularly when we have existing residential nearby. We've worked closely with staff as well as the neighborhood to study the best way to light these sport courts and how operationally they'll be used. And through that process, we've redesigned and respecified some of the lighting to be able to lower the sport court lighting by 4 feet. I think the last time the board saw this project, they were 24 feet tall. They're now 20. We've also reduced the pedestrian and parking lot lighting from 16 feet to 12 feet. All the lighting is full cutoff LED lighting that meets all the safety standards, but is designed to be fully cut off from spill over the areas, outside of the areas where they're intended to light. This is a quick graphic. The green area indicates the areas of 0 foot candles. So only the areas within the light are going to have any direct lighting whatsoever for the project. Katie also mentioned that we're incorporating public art. These are the locations, and we're proposing 5 cut steel panels to be incorporated directly into these shade structures. Mary Newbarrow is the selected artist by the city, and we're taking this through a parallel process with the Scottsdale Art Commission. So that concludes my presentation. I also have Phil Weddle with Weddle & Gilmore Architects in attendance. If you have any questions specific to the architecture, he's here to answer those, as well as Nick and Stephanie from the Parks Department and Allison from the City of Scottsdale as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments? Okay, Board Member Faki.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I just have a quick couple of comments. First, I really love the architecture, what you guys did. I think this is really neat, and it fit with a lot of the park we do. Now, my question is, we see a lot of pickleballs. So what's going on with this? Is it, I mean, this is a new trend right now instead of tennis? Or, I mean, how do you guys like survey the neighbors? What's going on?
Have you not been listening?
I have no idea. I mean, I just
Have
see
you
it.
not been listening?
So
I'll do my best to answer that to the best of my ability, but there was a very extensive public outreach process, and pickleball is very much desired in parks in this day and age, is what I would say.
So, which is fine. I guess my question more is, like, let's say 10 years from now, the trend change, whatever you have there could be reused. I'm not really familiar with the design of it, but I'm assuming it could easily be changed to be tennis court or whatnot, similar dimensioning.
I suppose that is possible. I would allow Nick or Stephanie to answer
No,
any questions about programming, if that's...
It's fine. I'm just out of curiosity. The other question I have, I see you have turf over there, and you mentioned water harvesting. So could you please explain a little bit? I mean, this is synthetic turf, or is this just will need irrigation?
Currently, the program calls for native turf, natural turf out here. Part of that is budget-driven. In terms of the rainwater harvesting, the bioswales I mentioned before, we're proposing a passive system. So when it rains, the water would be basically directed into these lowered planters to utilize that water. But there's no system being proposed to store water between rain events that could subsequently be used for irrigation.
Yeah, this is one of my challenges, especially talking about water conservation. I mean, I used to live in Troon, and we had several parks who had synthetic grass, and it looks really awesome. I mean, my kids loved it. We used it all the time. And I think this is something should be considered here. I don't know what your budget is, but unfortunately, we come see you guys after your budget is set and after the design is set. But I don't know, irrigating this big turf area, I'm not sure how much it will be used anyway, but it makes sense to have synthetic grass here. Maybe make your building smaller, I don't know, but something to consider. This will be one of my concerns with the project. But again, I love your architecture. I love what you guys done. But this is one of the biggest items that I'm concerned about.
And the one comment I would make about it is we're very aware of the water usage. And I personally feel that when you're utilizing water in a turf area, at least it's of a public use. It's going to be utilized for that purpose. It's not just a visual amenity. But we've made a really strong effort to minimize the size of the turf areas on this park. There was some commentary early in the planning process about making these larger, and I think we've been able to compromise down to a very appropriately sized turf allocation for this park. And I think that's that's a really good way to try to minimize the water use, as well as perhaps considering the artificial turf.
Yeah, I think, when you add maintenance and water use, you're not saving much money. I mean, just like in the big scheme of things, and you could do similar activity, almost the same activity actually in both. So, I mean, especially with now technology, the synthetic grass is really, you guys used it. I mean, city used it in different park before, so.
It's gotten better,
Yeah, so this is one of concern I have. I would like to see this change, but I like the building, I like the layout, but I really don't like the turf idea, especially in city park. Thank you.
Okay, Vice Chair Craig, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just a couple things. Mr. Brown, great presentation again, and it's nice to see this back at the review board. Thank you for making the changes to the light standards and the heights there. Hopefully that appeases the neighbors to the north and east a little bit. Board Member Faki, I can give you a little help, as can Board Member Joyner on pickleball. Regarding the turf, though, that's a tough one these days, and as a landscape architect myself, I'm more in favor of a natural turf, irrigated turf. I know that synthetic turf is changing rapidly, daily, yearly, and my concern with that, though, is how long it's a viable actual turf area, and then what happens to it when it is no longer it's exceeded it, or it's met its lifespan, and then it goes to a dump, and how it's an ecological hazard there. So I'd like to, that's my comment on the turf. But I like how you've got it so far, and I do like the plan overall, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Joyner?
I love this park. I think it's beautiful. I wish this would have been the one that was built by my house. And I really commend you for adding the additional trees on that northeast corner. I think that will give for more buffering. And to my young board member, as tennis players age, they can't play tennis as much, so they move to pickleball. It is so fun. I'll be happy to give you a lesson. But anyway, I'm very, very pleased with this, and I'm very much in favor of it. So thank you for all the work that you and staff have done on this project.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, Commissioner Serena, do you have a comment?
Yeah, maybe a question for staff. I received a comment from somebody that lived in the neighborhood, and it sounded like there was one additional small thing they had submitted on behalf of the neighborhood. I wasn't sure. Was that anything that didn't make it into our packet or last minute? I didn't see any correspondence, and the way they delivered it was that there was some communication that maybe wasn't in our packet.
Councilwoman Whitehead, Commissioner Serena, there should be, yeah, and I apologize if it didn't make it there.
Yeah. Is this the one right here? This is the communication? That's the communication?
Yes.
Okay, I got it.
So.
That's the one, okay. Got it. And these requests, these are the ones you're talking about that have been, can you discuss this? These are the ones we're talking about that the applicants agreed upon?
Correct. I think these have been incorporated for the most part into the plan.
Okay. These are the ones that you discussed on the, he's looking at me, I'm not sure if.
I'm not familiar with what you have in your hand.
Okay.
I don't know.
Can someone put this in his hand to see if it?
Councilman Whitehead, Commissioner Serena, so that was sent in yesterday, and the trees were added, but I believe this request was for additional hot bush shrubs to be added along that northeast boundary.
Okay. Is that a problem?
Okay, now I think I'm up to speed. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, what I'm seeing here is a request to add an additional several more of the dodonea or the hot bush along that north side. I don't have any problem with that. I think it would help screen it a little bit more, perhaps.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That's fine. A couple hot brushes. Okay,
There's only
great.
3 of that, yeah.
Sir, so if I don't know if we need to stipulate to that, or is that?
Yes, we should.
We
yeah.
should? Okay. Great. If we do that, I think I would agree the design and everything sounds great, so appreciate the additional bushes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Board Member Gushgari.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I just want to make a follow-up comment to Board Member Faki's comment earlier, and that is sustainability. I think that what his point was in general is sustainability aspect. Not long ago, we have a development came to the board, residential multifamily, close to High Chaparral. Not High Chaparral, that's a show. Chaparral High School. And there was a sustainability design of water reuse. Every single member of this board was so excited about the use of water and recycling water. Every single one of them, except for me. So the point being is, I feel, to echo what he's saying, is every time the city of Scottsdale has a job, has a project that we do, it'll be so neat to be able to be excited about it, to do something unique and sustainable, whatever that may be. It could be as simple as reharvest the rainwater, or something so obviously will be a runoff. Let's capture it and do something, by the way, a beautiful project, no doubt about it. But sustainability issue to get us all excited as residents of Scottsdale is something phenomenal. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I will say that I have seen the presentation and seen this park evolve for quite some time. I'm always excited about a new park, and Scottsdale, I just have never lived in a community that builds more beautiful parks than Scottsdale. And also that puts so much into the design and the art and the sustainability, and you can always get better, and we live and learn each time we try something new. So I'm very much in support of this project, and I want to thank the Parks Department, the planning staff, and the architectural team for everything that's gone into this, and I would entertain a motion. And I will point out there were no public comments, so. Do I hear a motion? Perhaps Commissioner Serena would like to make one with the hot bushes?
Sure. Councilwoman Whitehead, this move to make a approved case 51 DR 2021 per staff recommended stipulations with the addition of hop bushes along the full north edge of the pickleball courts after finding that the development application meets the Development Review Board's criteria.
I'll second that.
Okay, let's do a roll call.
Councilwoman Whitehead,
Yes.
Vice Chair Craig,
Yes.
Board Member Joyner,
Yes.
Board Member Brand,
Yes.
Board Member Faki,
No.
Board Member Gushgari,
Yes.
Commissioner Serena.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-1. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, and we are adjourned.